So we're looking at antivirus, and as part of the unified threat management capabilities of the Juniper SRX, and we're going to take a look at full file-based antivirus and express antivirus and check out the differences between those. So, and then as I said, I'll show you the configuration that we've got running on our own firewall. One thing I will say about antivirus is particularly processor intensive, and you've really got to make sure you've got the capabilities on your device before you implement this. You can take out your device, basically stop it from processing anything else. If you throw antivirus onto your device and you don't have the processing capabilities to actually handle it. Okay, so we're going to look at, after successfully completing chapter, you'll be able to demonstrate how an antivirus module examines traffic, look at the differences between full file-based scanning and express antivirus scanning, configure the settings, and check the functionality. So what's a virus? Well, we pretty much refer to that as malware, anything that's malicious, any malicious file, script, anything designed to infect or reproduce on the system. How does it come in? Email, FTP, and HTTP traffic, typically. So the antivirus capabilities on the SRX gateway prevents viruses before they enter the network, which is kind of really where you want to prevent them. Ideally, if you could, you'd stop every antivirus from coming in from the internet. I'd say it doesn't mean you don't need any other antivirus protection, though, within your network, because not all antivirus comes in through firewall. Somebody can bring it in their pocket on a USB stick, for example, and infect the network that way. Of course, we have talked about ways of preventing that kind of thing from happening, in that you can, at least in a domain situation, disable USB access to devices and so on. We did talk about how you can do that, but in any case, you probably do need other antivirus protection on your servers and other places. But a really good place to stop this type of malware and whatnot is at the gateway. So let's take a look at a few different methods here. There is full file-based scanning, which means the scan engine in this case is provided by Kaspersky Labs, reassembles and scans original application content. So just bear in mind here that the way that data is transmitted is we start off with an application. That application is then segmented down in the transport layer into TCP or UDP segments. They get put into packets and they get transmitted. So if we're going to inspect something at the application layer, we're going to inspect an application to decide, is this a virus? You kind of have to, well, not kind of, we really have to reassemble that application. And we have to do it in the gateway. Okay, now gateways normally don't do this. Gateways just happily pass packets, and then they can be reassembled by the end device, the client or the server device. So if we're going to examine an application to see if it matches a signature, we have got to reassemble this original application in the gateway, scan it, and then deassemble it back into its packets and forward it on. So quite a bit of processing involved. To do that with all traffic, remember, all traffic coming through the interface that matches a policy and that matches a particular protocol that we're interested in scanning. So very intensive. Scans regular files and embedded scripts, high virus detection rate, and can be CPU intensive. Not can be, is. Absolutely is CPU intensive. So the packet comes in, files received, we scan it, and then we send it out again. You'll note here that there is some latency in this process. It takes a little time to get all that done. Then there's express. Scanning uses a different scan engine with a different back-end hardware to provide higher data throughput. can scan individual data packets, catches most common viruses, and is less CPU intensive. So the file comes in, gets scanned, files get sent out, less latency, so it's faster. And then we have Surface Live Anti-Malware Protection as well, real-time antivirus scanning, URI checking, and MIME decoding. So what happens is our device will access the online list of signatures, which is hosted by Aricos Labs. So it will access that list of signatures, check it, and scan against that list of signatures. Okay, so that's another method of malware. So you do get a choice as to what you plan, whether you want to go with this method or whether you want to go with full file based or whether you want to go with express scan. Okay, so some terminology: pattern matching. So the scanned files are matched against an antivirus database which contains the virus signature, and pattern updates when the antivirus database stays current by downloading updates. So essentially what we do, we configure our device to go up onto the server and pull down the latest antivirus signatures. Requires an update URL, and of course we need DNS for this, as we do with plenty of other things. Intelligent screening scans only the first part of the file to determine if the file is a virus. Okay, so let's take a look at the process here. We have an antivirus module here. So we have this TCP stack. So as I said, we have to get all the parts of the application, which is all those packets. Get all those segments, put them together, rebuild the application, scan it, and then basically reverse that process and forward everything on. So we have this TCP stack here. We have application proxy, application layer processing, protocol parser. So all of that is built into this antivirus module. It's a scan manager, a scan engine, and our virus signature database. So with the full file base, packet comes in, the proxy puts it all back together, protocol parser, reassemble file, goes up into the Kaspersky scan engine, gets compared against the signature database, and then gets basically broken back into its original packets and gets sent out again. With the Express, pretty similar pretty similar process. The packets come in, they will get put together. We check the protocols. We have a data packet buffer. Jennifer has an internal scan engine. On some of the devices, they have this extra chip. It's a CSA chip, and the processing for the Express gets done by that chip. So it kind of offloads it from the main CPU onto this other processing engine. However, it still is fairly intensive on the system, and it goes. So Express is less intensive, but that doesn't mean it's not intensive at all. In fact, I can take that out anyway if we throw that on. So still relatively intensive. Okay, so global antivirus settings. We have the general configuration settings for the antivirus module. Or we can use settings that are not specific to the antivirus profile. So it includes UTM, custom objects, antivirus patterns and updates. We're going to take a look at our configuration shortly. Policy-based antivirus settings is where the UTM policies define which protocols are scanned for viruses. So you can scan FTP, HTTP and email, any one of those or all of those. So probably you want to scan all of them, most likely. And we have protocol-based antivirus settings, where we're going to control how protocols are scanned. We'll look at a feature profile settings, specify the scan, fallback, and notification option for antiviruses. So things like what happens if we can't open a particular, we can't reassemble a particular application. What happens if it takes too long to reassemble a particular bit of application that we're trying to scan? So there's a whole lot of parameters in there that you can set up to specify what happens in certain events. So I'm just going to take a look at some of these here. So in the full file-based scanning, scan mode, all files are scanned for viruses regardless of the extension. So absolutely everything is being scanned there. Okay, in the scan by extension mode, only files matching an extension are scanned. You can decide what is scanned. What gets scanned on the way in and on the way out. So here's our show groups, students default, security, UTM, custom objects, file name extensions. These are the extensions that you can include when you've got scan by extension. There's all these built-in extensions. So any of those, all of those, you can include. Scanning compressed data. So files might have multiple layers of compression. Content size limits, depending on the file size or accumulated TCP data size. So we can set limits on how big a how big a file we're going to scan. We also set scanning timeouts. So what if it just takes too long to scan a particular file? Are we just going to sit there and wait for it while our internet connection basically grinds to a halt, or are we going to say, no, it's taking too long, we'll take a predetermined action which maybe allow it, or maybe to block it, depending on what you want to do with it. And we can use session throttling in there to control just how much resources we're using. So here's an example. We've got a user down here in host A. They're contacting a web server up here on the internet. So we've got a HTTP request coming through. We've got an antivirus module there. So that request goes up, and we're going to be scanning that particular protocol, the HTTP protocol. We have the ability with the SRXs now to put in or to activate Sophos live protection. Now, you get a choice. You don't have to use it, but you can use it if you want to. So here we have a mail from thread to bill, subject, great gold stuff. And Sophos anti-spam prevents malicious email from getting through the bill. So we can scan on all types of content as well. Bill clicks a link to learn more about golf. Site launches a JavaScript sending Bill to another site. Script downloads malware onto Bill's computer, and the malware then emails Bill's friends about golf. So that's typically how that kind of malware works. So where the antivirus kicks in is that first of all it can stop the email getting through to Bill in the first place. Well, that's the anti-spam function to stop it from getting through in the first place. The antivirus can block access to those particular websites because they are registered on a list of dodgy sites. Okay, so just like we looked at previously when we looked at spam, we can have whitelists with antivirus. So we can say, well, actually these sites are okay. So we can whitelist certain sites. So the scan result actions is the virus affected files are blocked, as you would expect, but different notifications are available. So you can have a message notification, a protocol only notification, or an email notification that actually goes back to the sender So virus detection, you can have a fallback which says if it exceeds a timeout, if it exceeds a size, so the file exceeds a size, the file exceeds a timeout in how long it takes to scan it, that's called a fallback. So in other words, we're trying to scan it, we couldn't scan it, so now what do? You could decide, I'm going to block it, and you can notify the sender. You could decide, no, I'm not going to block it, and you can still notify a recipient. Like that. So in other words, if you notify the recipient, they're getting email that hasn't been scanned. So maybe it's got a virus, maybe it hasn't. We don't know. We weren't able to scan it. So we can send them a notification. Scanning fallback options define actions for traffic that cannot be scanned. It's either blocked or permitted and logged. So like I was saying, just come back. You get a choice. If you couldn't scan it, what do you want to do? You get to say, I'm going to block it. No, I'm not going to block it. And if I am going to block it, I can send a notification to the sender. And if I'm not going to block it, well, I can send a notification to the recipient saying, hey, this probably hasn't been scanned. Okay, so the antivirus UTM custom objects include URL whitelist, MIME whitelist, and file extensions list. So we can decide, MIME describes different types of content that comes in through mail. So here's an example here. We've got a whitelist. Normally a whitelist will be a list of URLs that you're saying these are okay. We're not going to scan these because we know they're okay. Why would you have a whitelist? Well, one of the reasons that you have a whitelist is to reduce the burden, the processor burden of scanning absolutely everything. Let's say there's certain sites that you use on a regular basis as part of your business. Maybe certain online sites that you go to, maybe you've got online databases that you basically access all day long. The example for us would be, say, our website, would be the ACIT learning portal, for example. That would be a site that we would access a lot. Probably our online student databases. So when you've got sites that you regularly access, you don't want to waste processing resources scanning traffic from those sites. You can put those into your whitelist and they won't get scanned at all. You can also say what type of content you may be going to allow in your feature, and there's an exception there to what you're allowing as well. File extensions, you have an extension list as to what you're going to be scanning. So we can have these custom objects that we can set up. Then we can, under our feature profile, we'll have an antivirus whitelist where we go here and reference the whitelist that we've set up. We're referencing also our MIME list under there as well. We've got our exception list under there as well. This is using Kaspersky Lab Engine, profile, AB profile, and scan options, scan extensions. We've got a list of extensions that we're including in your scan. So one of the points here is you can make this antivirus scanning as inclusive or as selective as you need it to be by going in and adjusting all of these different values. So one of the things to remember is the more things you're scanning, the more processor intensive it's going to be. This is our configuration for updating our database signature, via signature database, and we've got the antivirus database that we're going to be using, and the URL and the interval in minutes, just how often it gets updated. Instructions there on how to manually force an update. probably a good thing to do when you first set it up, just to make sure it's updated and make sure that the updates are in fact working. Fallback and notification configuration. So like I said, if we can't, we can set up the parameters that are going to cause a fallback operation. So here we've got an example of the content size, if the file was corrupt, how many layers of compression are involved in it. You can have compressed files inside of compressed files inside of compressed files. So how many layers are we going to go to before we give up? Engine not ready, we're out of resources. So these are all things that may cause us not to scan a file. In other words, our CPU is too busy to scan it right now. Maybe there's a password on the file, timeout, too many requests. So all these things can parameters that we can set up that we call a fallback operation. And then, as you said earlier, you can set up what happens when that occurs. So we set up our antivirus profile, and we then go and apply that to a security policy. So we got an antivirus profile, we apply that to a UTM policy, we apply our UTM policy to a security policy. So let's take a look at our configuration shortly. Some of the things we can do to check the status of our antivirus. We can check the last time we had a virus update, a virus database update, just to make sure that is working. Check the licensing. We can do a show security UTM antivirus status. This case was saying that the license was expired, so it was disabled. Particular case. And antivirus scan results. You can take a look at the statistics and see what we've been finding. Also appears in the messages log, which of course is our syslog file for our device. Okay, so we had a look at how the antivirus module examines traffic, difference between full file-based antivirus and scanning and express, and configured antivirus settings and verify the functionality. Some review questions. What's the difference between full file-based scan mode types? Essentially, we've got we can scan all files, we can scan by extensions. That's one of the main two differences in that regard. Methods available for HTTP traffic to be bypass antivirus scanning and where they are defined. Well, we have got a whitelist. Essentially, where we can define that. And how does intelligent pre-screening improve scanning performance? That's really where we use our express antivirus. And it doesn't scan the whole file, it just scans part of the file. Okay, let's elaborate on setting that up. Now, let's just go and take a look at the setup that we are using. I'll just pop this over onto the screen here. Okay, so we're looking at our configuration, and let's just get up to the bit we're interested in seeing. That's an IPsec configuration. Here we go, down to UTM. So what we're looking at in our configuration here is UTM, custom objects. This is a URL pattern, and this is a URL list. So we're calling it URL list. We've got some values in here, and some of the values that are in here are websites that we would go to on a regular basis. So we've got a student database in there, we've got our learning portal in there, we've got some Microsoft sites in there, a few other sites. Here's our website, Juniper sites, Seif.com, okay, banking sites, other sites in there. So that essentially becomes our whitelist. So there's our custom URL category. Whitelist value is URL list. Where do we get that from? Well, we actually called that URL pattern URL list. That's a user-defined name there. We could have called it anything we like. We just happen to call it URL list, and that's what we put in there. Picture profile antivirus. URL whitelist is listed in here. Here it is there, whitelist, and that whitelist contains these values there. So effectively, that whitelist is those sites. The type we are using is the Juniper Express engine. So we're using Express antivirus. The policy is default AV. So there's a default policy built in to the system here, and we're just using that default policy. HTTP profile is Junis Express antivirus default. So there is a default profile already in the system, which we are using. We're going to be scanning FTP, upload profile and download profile is the same. We're also going to be scanning SMTP, POP3 and IMAP traffic. So all of that is included in our protocols. So that's essentially the setup for it. Now, you then go and reference that in the security policy. Let's see if we can go and locate the policy that we're referencing it in. And this is it here. So we have this policy from zone classrooms to zone untrust, which is traffic to the internet. Commit application services. We've actually got it inactive at the moment. But there it is. That's our UTM policy default AV. So that would be the security policy that references our antivirus. So if these were not inactive, what would happen is traffic that matched the permit requirements for this policy would be further processed by IDP and further processed by the antivirus policy. So we process both of those. Why is it inactive? Mainly because our gateway is a little overloaded and can't quite handle the workload for those. So until we rectify that, they will stay inactive. Okay, so let's take a look at antivirus configuration there. So lots of things you can configure yourself, but one of the things that I kind of just pointed out just now is that there also are some defaults. Let's get back up to that. There are some defaults already built in. There is a default AV policy already built in to the system. And there is this Junos Express antivirus defaults built in as well. So you can just use the defaults, or you can go and set up your own requirements as well. Okay. Right, that takes care of antivirus. Let's go and take a look at content and web filtering. Content and web filtering. This is really the last thing we need to cover in this term. The only other thing we're going to cover is the exam. So we'll go through and talk about the exam. Let me just get this working like I need to. Oops. Okay. Alrighty, so content filtering and web filtering. Okay, so why would we want to do this? Well, there's plenty of inappropriate content out on the internet, in case you haven't already discovered that for yourself. Inappropriate for the workplace and many other environments. So this is where we get to use content and web filtering to make sure that that stuff doesn't get into our organization. We're going to take a look at describing the purpose of content filtering and web filtering, describe the parameters used to configure content filtering, web filtering, and configure content filtering and web filtering, and monitor it as well. Alright, do an overview. Content filtering, filter traffic based on parameters such as the MIME pattern. MIME is a description of content, different types of content that comes through mail quite commonly, but it just describes content in general. Supported for HTTP and FTP and mail protocols such as SMTP. Allows for user notification, and this particular feature doesn't require a license. So traffic is submitted based on three parameters: the MIME pattern, file extensions, and protocol command. Supported protocols, we said HTTP and FTP and mail. HTTP traffic can be permitted based on ActiveX, Java applets, cookies, exe, and zip files. And mail protocols do include SMTP, POP3, and IMAP. And users can be notified of block content in a couple of ways. So they can get a message embedded in the protocol, or an email can be sent. So how do we set this up? It's under the Edit Security UTM Custom Objects. So we can set up MIME lists, so we can say video, we can say lots of other things as well. Notice that there is a we've got a list which is video. We've got some underneath that we've got value video quick time, so we've got some more explicit definition on that. File name extension, in this case we're looking at exe files. Protocol command, in this case its value is get, so that's the get command, which is really built into which protocol we're looking at here. It's part of FTP, it's part of HTTP as well. So protocol block list value is delete. So we're setting up, these are our custom objects which we can set up under the under UTM. And once you go under the content filtering feature profile, we're going to set up a CF profile, and we're going to have a permit on our protocol list. We're going to have a block on our protocol block list, block certain extensions, and block the MIME list, and create an exception for the MIME exception list. Okay, then we're blocking content type. So there's ActiveX, Java applets, exe files, zip, and HTTP cookies. It's an example here. And notification options. So protocol only message, or protocol only, or we can send an email message. So we can choose not to notify the mail sender or to notify the mail sender, and we can put a custom message in, which is something like a content blocked message. Okay, so quite a few things we get to configure in this content filtering. It's a fairly rough sort of a tool in that you're kind of blocking whole categories and whole and just certain file types. So it's a fairly rough kind of a blocking tool. Configuration is applied to a UTM policy. So here we have policy called UTM1. Of course, you'd probably call it something a bit more descriptive than that. And content filtering, HTTP profile, CF profile. We've got FTP, and we've got SMTP, POP3, and IMAP under there. And we're applying that down to a security policy. So exactly the same way as we applied both antivirus, anti-spam, we apply that exactly the same way with content filtering. Let's take a look at how we verify content filtering. Okay, so we can show content filtering, notification types. Here's a custom message, no zip files. So this is a fairly blunt sort of a way of blocking content. You know, if we're just saying, well, we're going to block all zip files. Well, some zip files might be fine, some maybe not. But in this particular system, we just get to block all zip files or a particular file type. It doesn't have to be zip files, it could be something else. It can also be set up. So basically, let's just verify that content filtering is working. The client receives the configured message in the web browser. So there we are, I've gone to a website and to download a zip file, and just get a message saying no zip files. From the CLI, we're going to take a look at the messages file, and we can match content filtering, and we'll see what's come up in that. And show security UTM content filtering statistics will give us a look at what's happening with that as well. Here we are, and see we've blocked a zip file. So this does not require a license. It's a fairly kind of blunt instrument when it comes to blocking web content. And this is us taking a look at the JWeb interface and using that to verify and monitor what's been happening with content filtering. Okay, web filtering. Let's take a look at web filtering. So with web filtering, we've got three different types of deployment: surf control, web sense, and local lists. So if we take a look at these, within web filtering, we've got an integrated surf control capability, internet surf control server that stores a database of URLs and requires a license. Web Sense Direct, locally managed server that stores a database of URLs, so you can make your own list on a server. Local lists, so local blacklist and whitelist on the device itself, can be used in conjunction with Surf Control or Web Sense. And then there's enhanced web filtering that stores a database of URLs, and that requires a license. So really, the ones that require a license and that use the database are the Surf Control and the enhanced web filtering. Personally, I've used the enhanced web filtering. I haven't used the Surf Control. I found enhanced web filtering to be pretty good. Let's take a look at Surf Control. Uses an in the cloud Surf Control server. HTTP requests are sent to the server for a category lookup, and the database stores approximately 40 categories with more than 26 million URLs. So the device will refer to an online server as it scans and as it checks the traffic. WebSense Redirect uses a local database server which must be purchased and has a subscription to keep the database current, so you can set up your own local server. It's got 95 categories. And local lists, these are just blacklists and whitelists, which we've talked about before. Then there's enhanced web filtering. So with enhanced web filtering, there is real-time URL categorization and site repudiation. Uses this WebSense server. And so the URL categories get a lookup and returns a matched category. So you get to choose what categories you would like to block and what categories you'd like to allow. And what happens is the category is identified using the enhanced web filtering WebSense server, and basically either blocked or allowed. To set that up, under the Edit Security UTM Feature Profile Web Filtering hierarchy, this is setting up the surf control integrated. We're referencing our host right there with port numbers. We're looking at our SC profile, surf control profile, categories, news, and the action is either block, log, permit, or permit. We've also got a default block, log, permit, or permit there. We can choose what the default action is going to be. We can choose what the block message will be going to be, and fallback settings. Okay, so still looking at our web filtering here, and here we've got our WebSense Redirect type and a profile and a server name and our block message, timeouts, etc. Blacklist, whitelist options. Again, just create these lists up. Saves processing if things are on the whitelist and gives you more control over exactly what gets in and what doesn't. So the web filter has to be applied to a UTM policy, which must be applied to a security policy. So just like all the others, it works in exactly the same way. Enhanced web filtering through the JWeb. I have found that if you can, use the JWeb to configure web filtering. It is much easier to set this up in the JWeb than it is on the CLI. You get to see exactly what's going on. You get to see all the options, all the different categories that you can block or allow. So I have just found it to be much easier for this particular function to use the JWeb rather than the CLI. So we're looking under security, UTM, web filtering. That's where we're at here. Okay, so JWeb can be useful, particularly when it comes to UTM related stuff. Okay, let's take a look at verification and monitoring. So here's our client, local device. We've got whitelist, we've got blacklist set up there. Edit security UTM custom objects. We're taking a look at what our whitelists are, looking at what our blacklists are. So what have we got set up there? we've got utmserver.utm.juniper.net and utmserver.juniper.net bad HTML. Okay, there we are. There's our block message. And we go ahead and apply our policies. And verification, go to that particular URL, we should see this site has been blocked. There's our block message. Again, look at our syslog file, and we can do a show security UTM with web filtering statistics to see what we've been blocking. And we can also verify that through JWeb as well. Like I said, I found JWeb to be much easier when it comes to UTM. So we had a look at the purpose of content filtering and web filtering, looked at the parameters used to configure content filtering and web filtering, configured content filtering, web filtering, and monitored content filtering and web filtering. These are very good things, I will say, but the main factor when you're thinking about putting these in place is making sure that what you put in place does not interfere with regular business operations, because you can, this stuff can be just plain annoying if you don't get it right. And the other aspect is whether your SRX device can handle it, because it's just of the processing that's required to make it all work. So you want to test it out first. Just test it, see what happens, see that your device works with it all enabled. Okay, which content filtering attributes does the Junos support with FTP? Okay, so what can we do with FTP? Which content filtering attributes are supported with FTP? Remember. Okay, no. Okay, let's go back and do some cheating. Here's our content filtering. So what can we filter out? We can filter out extensions. We can filter out, let's go back to FTP. FTP. So we get to include that in our content filtering. We can put in our profile. Here we go. Values, the content, extensions, protocol values. So we can put quite a few things in there. Questions? What are the 3 web filtering solutions? So essentially we have got the options of going with just a blacklist, whitelist option. We can have a local server or we can have an online server. Those are the 3 options there. Which web filtering solution requires a Juniper license? There is this one here. We have got enhanced web filtering requires a license, as does surf control also requires a license. So both of those require a license. Enhanced and surf control. Okay. All right, and you're going to do a lab on that. Okie doke. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up the content that we needed to talk about for this particular term. So we've looked at security. We've looked at setting up a gateway. Looked at how that works. Looked at the building blocks of security policy with zones and policies. Going to take a look at some anti-hacking measures, so screen options and IDP were included in those. and we looked at how to set up VPNs and how IPsec functions. So we looked at all of that. And then we've looked at UTM, which is kind of like an add-on to that. So we can evaluate our traffic through UTM features by including UTM or referencing UTM policies in our security policies, and then forcing the traffic to be evaluated through that as well. So quite a lot of capabilities on our little SRX devices, and you can certainly throw a lot of work at them and make them work pretty hard. Alrighty, so that's it done for the content we're going to cover this term. The next thing we'll do is we will take a look at the exam, go through the exam and answer your questions about how to approach the exam.